Okay, so once again, good morning everyone and welcome to this week's lesson for our course in purposive communication. We will be tackling week 11 to week 13 of your lesson 4, and the first lesson we will be focusing on is what is a message. So at the end of this discussion, you are expected now to first identify situation that uses persuasion and argumentation, and second is to persuade and argue information. So in this discussion now entitled What is a Message? When we talk about messages or information now, every time that we convey these things, there are specific reasons behind it, or there are specific purposes now why we try to convey message. And this week, we will be focusing now on communication in purposes now, or conveying now information or messages for the purpose of argumentation and persuasion. Okay, so when we talk about argumentation, this is now conveying messages, conveying information in a way that you have what we call factual information, or whatever argument you are creating, it is backed up by factual information, by logical explanation, or it has now something that is rational. It is something that is rational. Okay, so when you create argumentation, this is not just simply messages or conveying information or messages now with no specific supporting documents to support now whatever you are conveying. So it needs to be factual, it needs to be logical, it needs to be rational, and it needs to have um, factual evidences or information. So that's your argumentation. But when we talk about persuasion, this is conveying messages or communicating now messages or information that simply appeals to emotion. So when we say emotion, whatever you are saying, whatever you are trying to convey now or to communicate to another person, it's purely based on what you feel, or it's purely based now on emotion. So it does not actually need any evidences, any factual informations. It just appeals now, or it uses what we call emotion. But in our discussion today, we will see now how argumentation and persuasion goes hand in hand together when it comes to conveying now messages or in terms of your communication. So when we argue, we persuade someone to believe in our opinion or point of view. So this is why we tried so much to debate, negate, and persuade. It is always been the purpose of argument. So every time you argue now with a specific person or a group of people, the main idea why you're trying to create an argument is to prove your point. When you try to prove your point, you want these people now who are listening to you to believe whatever you are saying, or to at least understand your own point of view. We all understand that different people now will have different opinions and different point of view. But when we create argument, okay, whatever communication or whatever messages that we want to convey, we need to make sure now to create now a turn or a possible turn that will encourage now, or that will persuade another person or group of people to at least understand or believe your opinion or point of view. Okay, we do not create argument if we don't want other people to be persuaded, or we don't want other people to believe what we're saying or believe now our own point of view. We always argue now if there are instances that there is now a mismatch in what you believe or in your point of view, or the understanding now of different topics and situations. That's the time now we create argument. Okay, so we can never say yes all the time, especially when we know that something in the sentence is not right, or it's quite different now, or it differs now from the idea that we tend to believe in. So as I've said a while ago, the main purpose of your argument is to allow now, or to create now a twist or a turn for other people now to believe or to listen to your own point of view. Okay, because you have different point of views. That's why argument now takes place, because you can never say yes to everything now, especially if what you believe in, your point of view, or the way you understand things are different from one another. Okay, so if they say now specific things about your belief or about your traditions or the regulations that you follow, and they tend to, okay, oppose now to what you believe in, of course argument will start to take place. But every time that we create argument now, or when we argue with these kinds of people, we need to provide now again what we call evidences or factual information. If we're just simply arguing and we're following now how we feel, or the emotion now that we are feeling because we felt now offended of them opposing now to what we believe in, or to the guidelines that we have provided, that is not no longer argumentative. Okay, it's just simply now you appealing now or emotionally venting out your ideas or your message. If you do not provide what we call informations or factual informations or evidences to support what you believe in, or to support the idea that you want the other people to understand, that will not become argumentative. So the most important part of an argument is to persuade someone without losing credibility. So we should provide solid and valid evidences. So this is what I've been saying since a while ago, that whatever you are trying to argue to another person, especially if the other party is close-minded and will not believe now whatever you say unless you have the facts or unless you have the evidences, these are the only ways now for you to persuade or to argue now, or to make that person believe you without losing your credibility. Okay, if you do not have what we call solid and valid evidences, and you're just simply mouthing all information, random information now, and those people now starts to notice that whatever you're saying is not consistent, is not credible, or the information that you are providing itself is not true or it's not factual, automatically they will start to lose interest, and at the same time they will start losing now, or you'll start losing credibility. Once you start losing that credibility, or that ability now to persuade because of the evidences that you have provided is not accurate or is not true, automatically those people will not listen to whatever information or message you are trying to convey. Okay, so where do we get now these solid and valid evidences? So it can come from references or sources now that are cited in books, magazines, journals, articles, and on any other printed materials. But do take note that these are not the only possible references that we can use. We can also use documentaries. We can also use true to life situations or true to life events that we've seen now through in the television of something that we've heard, as long as now it is or it matches now the argument, or it matches now the topic that you are trying to argue, so that it shows what we call consistency. It's the same with getting now or getting sources or resources now from books, magazines, or any other printed materials. So once you try now to cite a specific um, wordings from a book, magazine, journals, articles, or any other printed materials, and you're using references or two or more references from different books, it needs to be consistent with one another. It's not possible that one journal will be saying positive things, or you're focusing on positive things, but you've cited a negative message or a negative information. That will create now mismatch of information, and you'll start you'll start losing now what we call credibility. Okay, so if you remember when we talk about these printed materials, These printed materials are examples of your informative text. And informative text now contains what we call factual information. So when we say factual information, it does not need any opinions, or it is not opinionated, it is not biased, or it does not involve now any comments or suggestions from the author. It's purely factual. So whatever is written there is true and it's not biased. So that is how we get now your valid evidences that we can use for your arguments. So we face numerous challenges every day. And one of those is when we have to persuade someone to change not their minds. Okay, so every day now we have these challenges, or we experience now trying to persuade other people. Okay, just simply, for example, asking them to stop doing something or to do something. Those are types, or those are persuasions. So every day we experience now these kinds of situations wherein we try to persuade people to change their mind, to do something, to stop something, to learn something, okay, or to believe in something. We have those kinds of challenges every day. So our way of persuasion in these different kinds of situation will also vary depending now on the situation, depending on how much now of a habit, or how much this topic or this information now is something that they deeply believe in. Your way of persuasion will vary. Okay, there will be instances that the way you persuade other people will be very easy, and there will be instances wherein the way you need to persuade these people will take a lot of time and process. Okay, so in these types of situations now, we also need to understand that there's a possibility that we may not be able to persuade these people. Okay, it's not because that your persuasion level, or your persuasion, the way you persuade other people is not good enough. It also now will vary depending on the person you are trying to persuade. So when do we usually use now persuasion? So what type of situations do we usually use persuasion? So we have your reveal situation, your do situation, desist situation, the learn and believe situation. So let's now see how these situations now differ from one another, and how do persuasion now comes in terms of these situations. So the very first one is what we call your reveal. So your reveal is a situation now wherein it only arises when you know someone knows something, but they cannot tell you about it. So perhaps it is an information that is confidential. It can be also in a form of a secret, or they just simply don't want to tell you about it, or they don't want to tell you the truth. So your persuasion level now, or your persuasion power, will be put to test because you need now to do questioning, or you need to do now specific questioning, so as you are able to reveal now whatever information you want to know. So every time that we want to reveal now certain informations, or certain idea, or certain matter now on a specific person or a specific group of people, there are questions now, or there are proper questions or specific questions that we need to use, or we need to ask now these people, so as we are able to reveal now whatever information you want to attain. So in conversation, information is revealed a bit at a time and in turn-taking format. So later on, we will be discussing what is a turn-taking format. So in reveal situation, this is mostly seen now in job interviews, police interrogations, and getting to know someone. So let's see now how do they differ from one another. So when it comes to job interviews, we always have your interviewer and your interviewee. So the interviewee is the one applying for the job, and the interviewer is the one assessing whether that person is now fit for the job. So how do we use reveal now situations in your job interviews? So as an interviewer, it is your job or responsibility to make sure that whatever information the interviewee has or will be providing, so from his or her resume or CV, is true and accurate. So how do you know now whether the degree that he or did finish or the experiences that he or did her now finish is accurate? So it depends now on the questioning that you will be creating. So most of the time when we're interviewing someone, the first thing that we will say is, tell me about yourself. So how long have you been working here? What have you learned from this company? Why did you leave this company? Where did you study? Where did you finish your degree? And if you start seeing now inconsistencies, for example, if you start seeing inconsistencies, there's a possibility that the information provided now by the interviewee is not accurate or is not true. But it's also possible that because the interviewee is agitated, or for example, stressed or scared during the interview, that's why he or she now creates error when it comes to answering now the questions provided by the interviewer. So it's your job now as the interviewer to make sure to assess whether the information being provided to you, or whether now the message or the content now of the message being conveyed to you is true and accurate. And from there, you are able to reveal now the informations about your interviewee. Okay? When it comes now to your police interrogations, so police interrogations usually happens when a certain situation or a certain problem arises and they got involved, or there are, for example, certain incidents that had happened. So these are the time that police interrogations usually occur. So the police interrogations now, the main purpose of these interrogators is to reveal now what really happened during the incident or that situation. So whether it may be a car accident, okay, or any other types of accidents, it's their job now to be able to reveal whether the information being provided now of who they are interrogating is accurate or true, and they are able to reveal now what accurately happened during that time or during that incident. And for them to do that, there are also specific questions that they need to ask. Like, during this time, what were you doing? How did you end up in that place? Who were with you or who was with you during that time? So those are the types of interrogative questions that they can use now to reveal informations about the accidents. Next, we also have your getting to know someone. So how do we use now reveal situation, or where do we see now reveal situation in getting to know someone? So when we talk about getting to know someone, we assume that we don't know anything about that person, from the name, the age, their backgrounds, or anything about them that we actually really don't know. So when we talk about getting to know someone, the reveal part now in that situation is that you're asking, or you're trying to get now information, or as letting them now reveal information about themselves that you do not know. So how do we do that? When we approach someone that we don't know, the basic questions that we can ask is, what's your name? Okay. Where do you live, or how old are you? What are your hobbies? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Should you ask those kinds of things? Those are the questions now that we can use for someone that we are trying to know. So for them to reveal those informations, of course, there are also questions again that we need to ask them for them to be able to reveal now bits by bit of information about them. So that is your reveal situation. Next, we have your do situation. So when we talk about do situation, the power of persuasion will be test if you convince someone to do something for you. Okay, so when we talk about the do situation, this is actually persuading already someone to do something for you, whether it may be for you, for another person, or for both of you. That is your do situation. Your reveal situation is persuading someone to reveal things or informations about them, while your do situations will ask you now to persuade you now to do something for you. So this is very beneficial to someone who can do this kind of situation, but time is always a hindrance. Okay, so when we talk about time as a hindrance, so when we try to meet our friends, for example, where we haven't met for a very long time because of the pandemic, you have not seen each other for a very long time, and you tried now to create a reunion, or you tried to do a reunion, or you try to persuade them now to see you or to meet you, but okay, they'll say that, oh, I don't have time for it because I'm doing this assessment, I'm doing my job, or these kinds of things. So that's what we call about what we talk about when we say time. But it's not always time. There are also other possible hindrances why they cannot do now, or why can they not do the specific thing that you're asking them to do. It's not only time, there's also a possibility that it's not applicable for them, or the situation is not applicable for them. There's also a possibility that there's a limit to what they can do, so that's why they were not able to do what you're asking them. So where do we usually see now your do situation? So we have your parenting, managing, sales, and propaganda. So parenting is a very good example of your do situation, because your parents most of the time will say do this, do that, do those, do everything. Okay? So when they ask you to do the dishes, when they ask you to do the laundry or to fix your bed, those are examples of do situations. And if you, their child, now followed your parents, okay, or your mom and dad, and you followed them now when they said do the laundry, and you really did now the laundry, automatically that's a do situation. So they were able to persuade you to do something. How about in managing? So when you're managing, or when you're a manager now and you are tasked to ask now your other coworkers or the other employees to do something for you, or to do something now for the company, and they follow the instruction that you have provided, that's another example of your do situation. So you as the manager giving now information, giving now the task, or giving now the step-by-step process that they need to do, and they followed those things, that is another example of your do situation. So how about your sales? Sales is a very popular do situation. So when we go to shopping malls, or when you go to certain shops, there will always be what we call your salesperson. So the salesperson is usually the one responsible in selling a certain product. So they'll be providing informations about the product, they'll be demonstrating the product. And from that, once they encourage you now, or they were able to persuade you to buy the product that they are selling, that is another example of your do situation. Okay, from their way of presenting the product, demonstrating the product, and they were able to encourage you or persuade you to buy their product, that is now an example of your do situation. So next is, or lastly, we have your propaganda. So your propaganda now, if there are certain groups of people now who approach you and they ask you now to join them, or they ask you to follow now whatever they believe in, that's another example of your do situation. So if this group of people ask you to join their group, and you join their group, that is your do situation. Okay. Next, we have what we call your disease. So disease is actually the opposite of your do situation. So if your do situations now persuades you to do something, your disease situation actually now is the act of telling someone to stop what he or she is doing. So this is the act of making them stop, although this may seem difficult since habit is nearly impossible to change. Your ability to persuade will vary. Okay? So when we talk about habit, this is something that is done routinely. When we say routinely, it's part of your day wherein every day you need to do it. You will not be able to have a complete day if you're not able to do it. And these types of habits are very hard to change. So for example, vices, smoking, drinking, those are kinds of habits now that can be impossible to change. Why? Because if it's already part of your routine, like every day you need to drink this many, every day you need to smoke this many, and it becomes a habit, it will be very hard to remove. So if one person now asks another person who has a drinking habit, for example, to stop drinking, he or she now will not stop drinking immediately. There will be a specific time frame, possibly, or it will take a lot of time and persuasion before that person, okay, stops now what he or she is or his habit now of drinking. It's the same with other things. So if it's already a habit, it will not you will not be able to ask now these certain people to stop drinking, to stop smoking, to stop playing these games immediately. Okay, the persuasion is still there, but it will take a long time, and the persuasion now will take a long time. It's not something that is immediate, unlike your do, wherein if you ask them to do this, they'll automatically do it. But there are also deceased situations that are automatic or is done immediately. Like for example, when you see your brother now or your sister running inside the house and you told them to stop running, stop what you are doing or stop running, and they immediately stop. They listen to you and they immediately stop. That is still an example of your disease situation. So when you are asking now or persuading another person to stop whatever he or she is doing, whether it may be a simple task or a simple movement from a habitual movement or a habitual task, that is still your disease situation. So your do situation will ask someone to do something, whereas your disease situation will ask you to stop doing something. Okay? So where do we usually see these types of disease situation? We have first is your parenting. So parenting is very good examples now of your disease situation. Why? Besides from them telling you what you need to do, they will also sometimes tell you what you're not supposed to do. If they see that it will hurt you, or they saw now that these things could possibly break you, okay, they will ask you now to stop doing it. So when you're a child, for example, and you're running now in the house, and they'll see that you're about to hit now the wall, so they'll tell you to stop. So that's another example of your parenting for disease situation. Next, we also have government policies. So when we talk about government policies, we have now signages that they usually post saying no smoking, no littering, no loitering. There's a lot, okay, of government policies. And if you, in specific areas now, if you see a no smoking sign and no person now is smoking in that area, therefore, okay, the signage was useful, and at the same time, it was followed. So that's another example of your deceased. And lastly, we have your policing. So for policing now, this is very common in your highways. So when you're passing now certain areas, there will be police officers there that will be asking cars or people now passing through to stop. So when they ask you to stop walking or stop now moving your car, of course, automatically you need to stop. So that is your disease situation. Next, we also have what we call learn. So the main idea with your learn situation is to impart what we call knowledge and making someone understand something or making them be able now to do what you have imparted. Whatever knowledge you have imparted to them, if they were able to successfully do it or understand it on their own, okay, with your guidance, that is now your learn situation. That's why it's very useful now, or it's very common when it comes to your teaching, coaching, and once again, parenting. So for your teaching now, for example, if your teacher is teaching you or instructing you now or guiding you to do now a certain project. So first thing is that your teacher now demos whatever you're supposed to do. So she or he will demonstrate now the step-by-step procedure of what you need to do, whether you need to build something or whether you need to create now something. She or he now will start to demo now the step-by-step process. And if she sees now that the students were also able to follow now the step-by-step process that she or he have created or have shown now to you, automatically that's an example of your learned situation. So the students now who were listening were able to understand the step-by-step procedure and were able to apply now and follow the step-by-step procedure. It's the same with your coaching. So for your coaching, most of the time when you go to gym or when you have now or you do sports, before especially now if you're new to the sports or you're new to the gym, before you do certain things, usually your coach now will tell you what you need to do. Okay, so once he or she have finished now demonstrating or instructing you what you need to do and you were able to do it, that once again is an example of your learn situation. And in your parenting, learn situation happens when they teach you something now that you need to do. For example, walking, feeding yourself, okay, wearing your clothes. Those are examples of learn situation. So when they start teaching you how to walk and you're able to walk on your own, that is your learn situation. If they teach you now how to wear your socks, and through time you were able to do socks on your own or put your socks on your own, that is another example of your learn situation under parenting. And lastly, we have what we call believe. So belief will focus on changing someone's belief, such as in religious conversation. Beliefs are at the base of much of what we assume is true. This makes persuading at this level both powerful and difficult. Yet when you master working at third level, you may be better at all around persuading. Do take note that when we talk about belief, we will be focusing now on what we call your religious beliefs or religious conversations. And we need to remember that if we have different religion or if we have different religious beliefs now with other people, there will come a time that it can create conflict. Okay, because we have different things that we believe in. Because whatever we believe in, that is what we assume that is true. Because we believe in those kinds of things. That's why it says the persuading level is difficult. Okay? You can ask now or you can influence someone to listen now about your belief, about your religion, or about your um, beliefs now when it comes to religious things or religious conversation. But there is certain persuasion now when it comes to you asking them to join you or to become part of your or what you believe in. There are some religious conversations wherein you can share informations about your religious belief and they will listen to it, okay? But it doesn't mean that they will be encouraged to join now your religious groups or to join your religious conversations. So this is where persuasion is really hard because most of the time, because we believe on certain things and we grew up on these certain things, besides from it becoming a habit, it becomes a part of you. Okay, because these are the things that you believe or assume that is true. Okay, so when we talk about these kinds of things, it's very important to remember now that when can you mute your mic please? Kaninong mic yung naka-on? Okay, so once again, so when we talk about belief, we usually see this in situations such as leaderships or your religious or cult conversations. So when we talk about leadership, of course, every time that we believe now on certain things or in your religious belief now, we have what we call your leaders. And these leaders now are the ones informing us of the things that we need to know, of the things that we need to believe in, or of the things to make sure now that we are following now these beliefs. And these leaders now, we look up to them. Since we look up to them, we believe now or we listen to whatever they are saying. It's the same with your religious or cult conversation. Whoever now or whoever you see now as a leader or someone that is the head now of this religious group, we tend now to believe whatever they are saying. Okay, because it's what we believe in. And at the same time, it's because we consider them as the head of the group or the leader of the group. That's why their words now matters most. Okay, so that is now the different situations when it comes to persuasion. So once again, we have the first one, which is your reveal, followed by your do, desist, learn, and believe. Okay? So every time that we create persuasion, there are certain factors now that affects people to agree. Whether they agree or disagree, there are certain factors now that affects when they want to agree now to certain people. And the very first example or the very first factor that we have is your liking. So it says here that it is very easy to persuade people if they like you, which is very true. When a certain person or when you like now a certain person or when you adore now a certain person, sometimes we tend to listen more to these people rather than listening to someone you don't like. Okay, so when we don't like a certain person, the tendency is even if they do something good or you see them doing something good, it won't matter because at the end of the day, you don't like the person. So liking is very important now when it comes to persuasion. So if the person now talking or the person that is talking, you like that person, the tendency is you listen now to whatever he or she is saying. But if the one talking is someone you don't like, automatically, of course, the tendency is that you will not be persuaded or you will not listen to that person. Next, we also have what we call your social proof. Okay, wherein it implies that people are moving in the direction that you want. So if you want to certain people to follow you want certain people to like the same things that you like, that is an example of your social proof. Wherein, okay, this is based now on how the society will start seeing you or will start following you. One good example are your social media. So we have people who we follow in social media, in YouTube, in Facebook, in Twitter, in Instagram. We have different people that we want to follow. Okay? And these people that we follow now, they'll start seeing that they are influencing people, or they are able to influence now or to persuade people to follow them if they see that their followers starts to increase, the number of people watching their YouTube or watching their videos starts to increase. Okay, those are examples of your social proof. Next, we also have consistency. So as I said a while ago, when we talk about arguments, when we create arguments or when we try to persuade people, consistency is very important. When they notice now that what you're saying is inconsistent or what you're saying is not true or it's not factual, automatically people will start to doubt you and they will not agree to what you are saying. Next, we have authority. So when we talk about authority, people are strongly influenced by experts. Okay? So you will believe more the person who is more knowledgeable about those certain things or certain matters rather than someone who's just simply, okay, creating opinions or suggesting opinions, but they are not or they do not know anything about the topic. So for example, vaccines. Will you listen to someone who created the vaccine or who have um, experimented now or have done the vaccine, or you will listen to someone who doesn't even know anything about a vaccine? Okay, so most of the time we agree to people or we listen to people who we think are experts in those situations or in those topics. If we listen now to people who doesn't even know what they are talking about, okay, the tendency is that the persuasion is not that good or it will not create a very strong persuasion because we are aware that whatever that person is saying is not even true or accurate because he or she doesn't or is not an expert now when it comes to those matter. Okay, so that is your authority. Next is scarcity. People want what they cannot have. So this is very popular now, especially that, okay, your politics is a big issue now because we have election coming up. Scarcity is very popular to these kinds of people or to these politicians or those people who are running for a position. Okay, we have people now who are in different um or in different parts of the society, they're considered poor, wherein they don't have good living conditions, they are not able to eat at least 3 times a day, or they don't have jobs. These are now people, or these are the people now who these politicians will start eyeing to. So how do they make these people agree now, or how do they persuade these people to vote for them? They give what we call promises. Since they don't have good living conditions, they might promise, I'll give you good living conditions. I'll make sure that you are able to eat 3 times a day. I'll give you a job. So those are what we call scarcity. Okay, they use now the weaknesses or the things now that these people don't have or what they want to have to persuade them or to make them agree to them or to make these people now agree to what they are saying. And since these people are desperate and they want to have now what the other people have, wherein they want to have safe environment, they want to be able not to worry about food or their job. Okay, that's the things that they focus to, and that's the way now on how they can persuade these people. Next is reciprocity. So when we talk about reciprocity, it gives something to gain something. Okay, when you, for example, they want you to believe something and they promise you that if you follow us, we will give you these things. So if you follow us, we'll give you this. And they actually gave you something. So the more that you or the more that the other person gains something, the more that they listen to you. They won't listen to you unless they will gain something or they will have something out of what you are saying or trying to do. So that is your reciprocity. Okay, so that ends now our lesson when it comes to what is your or what is a message. Next, let's go now to the next module, which will focus on communication, aids, and strategies using tools of technology. So at the end of this module, you are expected to first obtain, provide, and disseminate information. Okay, so we will be focusing now on communication aids or strategies now wherein how do communication happens now, or what strategies can we use now in creating or in doing communication. So one way to obtain information is to ask questions using your WH questions, which are your why, what, who, when, where, and how. Okay, we use these kinds of questioning because this is very common, and at the same time, it's the simplest way now to get information. Whether you want to know a name of a certain person, whether you want to know the idea now or whatever that person believes in, the use now of your WH question is the most common way to get those kinds of information. Okay, so how can we use this now, or how can we use this type of questioning in using it in a communicative strategies to involve to obtain now what we call information. So as I've said, there are different strategies, or there are different communicative strategies that we can use now to get information or to create now communication in certain groups or certain person. So when we employ strategy in communication, it creates an easy way for better understanding because it details the message, the audience, and the resource of communication. So when we use these different strategies now, when it comes to communicating, it does not only create now the communication easier, but at the same time, it creates what we call better understanding. Better understanding in what? It makes the message more detailed, more accurate. That's why it's able to understand better. It makes the audience now listen. It makes the audience more attentive to what you are saying. And at the same time, your resource now, or whoever now is your source of information now, has or have now more or have deeper knowledge now when it comes to those information. So those creates now better understanding because they are able to explain it further, provide examples, make it in details. Therefore, the audience now listens further. The audience listens more now to these informations because it's very detailed. Okay, so we have these 7 different strategies when we talk about your communicative strategies. So again, when we talk about communicative strategies, these are things now that we can use or we can do to create conversation, to stop conversation, or to open now a new conversation after a previous conversation. So the very first one is what we call nomination. So when we talk about nomination, this is where a speaker now nominates to collaborate and produce a sensible topic. I am, for example, a speaker. Okay, and I will nominate now other persons to create or to open now a new topic or discussion regarding now the discussion or topic that I have provided. How will I do that? I can say, do you have any questions? Do you want to add something in our discussion? Do you have any clarifications? Those are examples of nominations. So when you are, okay, when you, for example, answered the questions that I have provided, or you provided now, or you said, oh, I have an additional, okay, additional say or explanation about this topic, and you started sharing now, or you started giving your additional information. That is now you being able to create another conversation. Next, we have restriction. So we need to remember that when we talk about restriction, these are actually what we call limitations of a speaker. When we say limitations of a speaker, there are certain factors now that can affect a speaker not being able to convey information or communicate further because of these limitations. What are possible limitations now or restrictions that can cause a speaker not to convey or communicate messages? So your instructor now, or you're studying, for example, another language. You're studying Korean, for example. And your teacher now suddenly asks you, can you introduce yourself using the Korean language? You being able now or not being able to, or it's your first time to attend the class, you will not be able to introduce yourself in that language because you are not knowledgeable, or that's your limitation or your restriction. Or when they ask you to speak on another dialect but you only know one dialect, that's another restriction. Or if a speaker now or your teacher asks you to talk about a certain topic but you are not knowledgeable about the topic, or you don't have any idea about the topic, that is again what we call restriction. Okay? Next, we have what we call turn taking. So as I've said, when we started, there is now what we call turn taking. When we say turn taking, this is actually or will pertain now to groups of people wherein it will they have their own time now in being a speaker or being able to communicate now whatever information they want to convey. Also the same when you are interviewing. When a person now or the interviewer asks you a question, okay, the interviewer will not also be the one to answer the question that he or she created. It will be now the interviewee or the other person now. It will be his or her turn to talk after now the question was created. So during turn talking, we need to remember that you need to listen first or to wait first for the other person to finish before you also start talking. That's why it's turn talking. When it's your turn, that's the only time you start talking. In groups of people, when your teacher now groups you and asks you to talk about a certain topic or discuss now a certain topic, so automatically, one person will start saying now things about the topic or giving information about the topic. And once he or she is done, another person can add now something about that information. So that is your turn talking. Next, we talk about topic control. When we talk about topic control, this is actually simply grasping now the idea or main message now of a certain discussion. So when your teacher asks you later on, what have you learned now in our discussion for today? And you said, I've learned that there are 7 types of communicative process and that we can use them now to create or provide now best information when we are communicating. That is another example of topic control. You were able to focus now on one topic and you were able to understand that topic and provide now the main idea of that topic. So that is your topic control. Next, we have your topic shifting. So when we talk about topic shifting, this is just simply shifting from one topic to another. So when your friends are discussing now about beauty products, then your other friend suddenly said, oh, I want to order milk tea. That is topic shifting. So from beauty products, you went to milk tea. Or from milk tea, you went to beauty products. That is topic shifting. It's changing now the topics that you are discussing that are not related to one another. It's a sudden shift in your discussion or in your conversation wherein the two topics are, or two or more topics are not related with one another. Next, we have your repair. Repair is simply correcting yourself once you create now an error during communication. So example, I'll say, We have 6 types of communicative strategies. Oh, I'm sorry. We actually have 7. It's not 6. That is an example of repair. You automatically now repairing or fixing now the error that you have created during discussion or during communication. And lastly, we have what we call termination. So termination is simply ending now or closing the conversation or the communication process. So how do we usually end now or terminate your communication process? We can say goodbye. We can say, oh, thank you, I'll see you again. Those are types of termination. So once you end now, you need to make sure that during the termination process, it will not shift to another topic or it will not add more information now or it will not turn into turn talking. Once you create the termination, the communication should end there. So when you say goodbye, I'll see you again next week, the communication ends there. Okay, and the next time that you communicate will be again when you see each other next week. So that is your termination. So once again, we have 7 types of communicative strategies, which are nomination, restriction, turn talking, topic control, topic shifting, repair, and termination.